Welcome to Hacker Hangouts, joining on a Saturday morning. I am so excited to do this. I'm glad I get to hang out with you all. We are talking how hacker culture has become mainstream. We're mainstream now. We have to give it all up. It's no longer cool. Or I guess that's kind of what we're talking about.
We're
Is
no longer
cool.
underground.
We're no longer underground, but everything that was like underground geek culture and shunned and what I feel like was the butt of the joke has now become mainstream. And I think the best way to introduce this topic is Gowrie came up, we talked about at the end of stream, what's our next topic? Gowrie came up with this idea, and as he started talking, it just gave us all kind of excitement because he really hits the nail on the head. So Gowrie, I'm going to throw it over to you.
So I actually had this funny. I had this discussion with my mother, like, I don't know, 2 years ago, something like that. And some background, she's been in the software industry for like 3 decades, right? 1990, I think, is when she started. And so she's been around geek culture for a long time. You know, I think she was a mathlete when she was in high school, things like that. So I come from a long line of geeks, if you will. Um, and I had this chat with her that, you know, geek culture has always kind of front run what becomes cool in the future, right? So look at video games. Video games started with, you know, like Pong in bars, which became instantly popular. Like, if you don't know the history of Pong and games like that in bars, they were all over Europe. They were freaking cool. Everyone loved them. But then, like, bringing them into the household, there became this like shunning of geeks cultures where if you were a video gamer, it was a little weird in the 90s, right? You still had this like jock gamer or like jock nerd dichotomy. But then obviously as the decades went on, now literally everyone is a gamer and everyone can be a gamer. And we were discussing how that affected, you know, hacker culture. You know, previously we talked about, you know, hacker culture in the 90s was almost a meme, right? Because it was, you know, the hackers came out and there was this big butt of the joke that you got a bunch of geeks running around trying to save the world, and they think that's what, you know, they think they're important from that perspective. But the culture that has really come out of that, and Silk has this video coming out very shortly about what is a hacker and what defines a hacker. There's this RFE that says RFC. I don't want to take your fire, so do you have the RFC up?
Yeah, I'll pull it up. And I think, like, and here's the thing: is the video's coming out, so I don't think there's any harm in talking about it. But there's an RFC. It is 1983 hacker, a person who delights in having an intimate understanding of the internal workings of a system, computers, and computer networks in particular. Again, I think the key part here is a person who delights in having an intimate understanding, not the intimate understanding itself.
Right, because you can have a varying level of intimate understanding, but someone who delights in it, right? And I think that really, like, embodies the hacker culture, right? That delightment of, ooh, I just learned how this thing worked, right? Ooh, I feel like I've just gained a superpower in that sense. But it's an internal delight, because if you try to explain that to, you know, a layperson, they're going to be like, yeah, he's real passionate about that, but I think it's a little weird. Right?
It's like sharing your hobby with someone who doesn't share the hobby. It's like talking about like Pokemon cards or something like that, and you're like, yeah, in Charizard is the coolest thing ever because he can do this, and they're like, I know you're no. It's some topics. Don't get me wrong. You can share that passion, and they get excited about it. And the other ones, it's like, oh, it's over their head.
So it's funny you bring up Pokemon cards, because it's another thing. Like, even Magic the Gathering and card games like that, wildly popular even through the early 90s up through 2000s and today. But there's a whole different level of acceptance in playing. And this all started with the discussion of Dungeons and Dragons, right? D&D, when it came out, was even portrayed and continues to be portrayed in the media as this thing that people engage in, you know, a dark, musty basement, and everyone's a smelly geek and all of those things. When in reality, like, the wide culture of nerds and geeks out there, which largely is just the normal populace now, engage in it on like a weekly basis, and it is a hugely popular game.
Well,
and we were talking about, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, and even D&D in general, which I think is interesting because, like, in some ways, I was told, but like, where your mom played D&D. My
Yep.
parents, like, in no way were part of, we'll call it geek culture. And my grandparents was D&D had to be of the devil. Like, it's demons and it's dragons, and you can't, like, and you're summoning things like that has to be weird. And it was like shunned. And I think even like when you talk about Pokemon versus Magic the Gathering, there's even like this weird dichotomy of saying, okay, Magic the Gathering, that's cool, and maybe that happened later, but like if you're but Pokemon is childish, or like this weird
Yeah.
thing there.
So let me posit the question, and then we'll jump in. I'll jump to Gulo. The question and the topic of the stream is, when and how did hacking become mainstream cool? Because it is mainstream cool now. So go for it, Gulo.
I'm questioning whether it's actually mainstream cool or whether we're so old that we think it's cool and we're so cut off from reality now because this is our lives. Because I'm still part of like my old hillbilly family stuff, and nothing I do is cool to them. It's either sports or get the hell out.
So I'm gonna toss this out there. Chris Hemsworth, Thor, played a hacker in the movie Black Hat. Right? Like, that's the level of cool and mainstream acceptance that we are at. We're being played by Thor.
I'll go beyond that, though. I think you take the and it just fell out of my head. The Witcher, the guy who plays the Witcher.
Yeah, the Superman guy.
Henry Cavill.
Yeah. He is an outspoken geek, and I think what's so you see some of the interviews with him, and it's kind of disgusting because it's like women like, but you're not supposed to be a geek. You look like this, and it's like it's just like it's weird in so many different ways. But I love the fact that he just embraces it, like in no way. What was that?
Vin Diesel, dude. Pitch Black, that whole Chronicles of Riddick, that came out of one of his D&D campaigns. He's a huge D&D nerd.
Really?
And, like, yeah, dude. There's
Vin Diesel, dude.
Vin Diesel has played D&D on YouTube with I forget the Critical Role, I think.
This is my point, though. If we're questioning whether or not Vin Diesel was playing D&D, that means that there's a split between the two. There's some point where we're like, that dude is too cool to be a nerd.
Yes.
I'm not talking about you, Gallery. I'm talking about like Silk being like, really?
Yes. No. Okay. What I'm saying is that may have been the case a decade ago where we would talk about that. But now I feel like it's common knowledge that that these big celebrities play, that these, big, strong guys are, engaging in these things. And it's been the relatively common knowledge for so long that people just accept it. Right. And it is, at what point in there did hacker culture and geek culture and all of these things we engage in? And that was the question. I was just like, at what point did it become cool? Is it cool? I guess that's a good question.
I think there's two parts here, and we can answer them in any order. I think first, is it actually cool? Like, one, I'm going to just say yes. I believe, yes, it is. I do it for a living. Of course it's cool. No, I'm just kidding. But I think then how, and I think the how is way more interesting than if it is. Because if it is up for opinion. But I think the how is not like it wasn't a quick thing. I think it started as far back as like Lord of the Rings, like widely, there was this huge gap, and there's so many reasons why this gap exists. Like CGI wasn't at the point, the graphics designer, the story wasn't there, but then there was no money in fantasy, in fiction. Like Lord of the Rings was it was the gateway drug for people my parents' generation who grew up reading J.R.R. Tolkien, going, oh, this is cool, and it's okay to learn this. I think the other piece is Star Wars. Star Wars is another one where it came back with the much far superior prequel. No, I'm just kidding. I can't say that on stream. Someone will kill me. But so it came back, and I think that was the gateway drug, which started pushing us towards this. So
acceptance. Praxis, brought up a good point, which is that hacker culture doesn't equal geek culture, which, we can argue about the peripheries of that. I do think there's a good argument there. So we have to talk about what is hacker culture. And what I think of as hacker culture is largely overlapping. Like the Venn diagram is not quite a circle, but it's very close, is the maker community. right? The maker and the hacker community are very interlocked. They're very interrelated because they're doing functionally the same thing. It's just that the hacker scene, by and large, is more concerned with security than, maybe just trying to hack things up. And that's from the security hacker perspective. We're talking about OG hackers slapping hardware together, things like that. Then that, a little different. But that's why I said, like, that Venn diagram is very close to a circle. Not quite, but very close to a circle because of that. So, just trying to define what do we mean by hacker culture versus geek culture. But I do think they're related because I think even geek culture can be described as someone who takes significant pleasure in understanding the intricacies of something, right? You can have a band geek. You can have, you can have a D&D geek. You can have geek is not this like monolithic term that describes every person who gets giddy about the internals of all systems.
When I think it all comes down to curiosity. I think it's passion about pursuing your curiosity. I think that's the way I'm going to define it. Is if you have passion about any topic, about pursuing it, I think that's where it is. Gulo?
So band geek, that's an interesting one because growing up, band geeks were band geeks and they were shunned by damn near everyone and everything. But if you maintain as a band geek into adulthood, and I mean adulthood past like age 25, then you're suddenly cool. If you're able to pick up an instrument at a party, or you post a YouTube or TikTok or some random video online of you playing some instrument, people are like, oh my God, you're talented. That's super cool. Way to go. But you did that shit when you were a kid and you had eggs thrown at you, or you got in fights, or there was a huge split between these.
But even today, go ahead, Gator, go for it.
That's how you got girls, man. If you could play an instrument, you play Phantom of the Opera on the piano, walk into the room with that type of presence, man, that's how I got my woman. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
that didn't happen for you guys? Oh, okay.
Actually, that is in fact how I met my wife. I played the piano at a piano bar and left with a wife. So it was 1,000 Miles by Vanessa Carlton. And I'm not kidding. Nice. I was in my dress whites. So yeah, that it is an effective way to meet your significant other.
But that's as an adult though. Still as
children, true.
They're still shunned. And this is my point. And I'm not necessarily saying that what I do isn't cool, because I find it incredibly cool. But I think back to like any significant others that I've had in my life. I can name one that's been excited in the stuff that I actually do and want to learn more about it. Everyone else is like, you're a nerd, go do your nerd things and leave me out of it. And that's just been the general consensus. I work in the gaming community. We have LAN parties, we have gaming tournaments, we have D&D campaigns, we have all of these things that are built into our culture that we do all of the time, which I think is cool and fun. But I don't think that's the normal, or at least that's only normal in the big cities, perhaps. All in the rural areas where I'm from, all the hillbillies are, if it's not sports, if you're not playing football or hockey or baseball or basketball, it doesn't count. They may play video games at night, but not much.
So I disagree, because you brought up one of the things that I think we've all done, which is a LAN party. 1990s, early 2000s, pick up your computer and go to a rec center with your computer, plop it down and plug yourself into a router and play some, Counter-Strike or whatever it is. Or bringing your Xbox with you to do the like local Xbox play, things like that. Or even just playing Red Alert over Serial, things like that, right? So like we're old enough to understand that today's LAN parties are on Xbox Live, they're on Steam, they're on other, like it is commonplace. So this is why I was saying that our culture that we grew up with doing those things became mainstream. It may not be exactly the same, but it front ran it because we looked at it, we had fun, and we worked at debugging the switches and the routers to figure out how to get all of your stuff working because someone has the same MAC address, things like that. But it front runs it, and because there were some really smart geeks and nerds out there that were like, hey, I can make a business out of this, turn it into Xbox Live, and now all of a sudden everyone can do the same thing. It's just easier to access. Is it the same culture? I don't think so. But this is why I said in the beginning, hacker, geek, nerd culture kind of front runs the general society, in that things that we do tend to eventually become commonplace and cool, quote unquote.
So I'm thinking you have something there to where the barrier to entry to become a geek has lowered, because technology has gotten easier over time to where people can adopt it, versus like exactly what you said on the networking, right? When we went together, somebody would inevitably have an issue, or you'd have to go through and make a new cable or something down those lines, versus going through and, hey, now you can go buy a console, literally pay $60 and you're online for a year. So yeah,
I mean,
I think that's maybe
part of it, though. Like, video gaming in general, I think, and that LAN party specifically, was my gateway to hacking. Like, we've talked about this one before. Unreal Tournament 2004 was like my first interaction with like broadcasting and using TCP dump and reverse engineering a packet and things like that. Like, I think it sort of starts to coalesce a little bit with hacking, because you wanted to like figure out that you didn't have Xbox Live. You had, oh goodness, GameSpy Arcade and XP Connect. And before those, you were like just setting up VPNs to be able to play with friends. Like, may have ran a wire between two houses, because that was the pinnacle, by the way. That was the pinnacle. It was remote little radios, which went back and forth, and that was how we talked. And then a wire between houses. Like, that was... Oh, it's just like
it's like
good.
The modern version of Two Cups and a String.
Yes, absolutely is.
Gula's got something.
Oh, going Gula.
No, because you can't say 2 cups and something on air anymore.
Oh, and
It's
that
just
is
not
where we get
appropriate.
demonetized again.
Oh man. So, I mean, was it Hackers the movie? Was it when Watch Dogs came out and they actually started using real tools in the game versus, the flashiness? Because I can't honestly say I can put my thumb on one pivotal thing that changed it. I think it was a slow cultural change to where it became interesting and talked about all the time on becoming and how hacking became cool.
I'll take this one. Or here, Gulo, you go, and then I'll grab it.
All right, so I'm a gamer. I work in the gaming industry. I used to be a professional gamer way, 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 way back in the day. So when I used to go to gaming, when I did LAN parties, it was we were playing World of Warcraft 2 or World of Warcraft 3. It was that was actually before Counter-Strike, Red Alerts, all those different types of things. But I was a professional gamer back in Quake 2 and Quake 3, and I would go to actual tournaments across... in the Northwest where I lived, and I would compete in tournaments, and it wasn't a big thing back then. Quake 2, Quake 3. And then when Unreal came out, more people started to join, things like tribes. It wasn't until Counter-Strike came out, and that kind of started the whole ball rolling for professional gamers, but it wasn't in the US. When I lived in Asia, it was all internet cafes, and they had all these tournaments in internet cafes, because no one owned computers. You had to go to an internet cafe to connect to the internet, and they have all these tournaments. And it started to spin up in Asia, and Counter-Strike got really, really big in Asia, and it started to spill over to the US. I think that was when the gaming culture started to take over. Now, you had jocks, and you had some people that would sit down and play video games for the violence. You'd have them play Madden or FIFA or whatever. And then you started getting things like Counter-Strike, and then eventually Halo. And as those became more and more prolific, people were like, hey, I can make money at this. And then esports started to come along, and people started to get paid a lot of money to play some of these games.
This is probably an interesting segue, because one, Gator talked about how like when it started, which I do think is in media and movies and gaming. The other one, by the way, CryptoCat joined the chat, which is fantastic. If you're interested in hacking, if you're interested in hacking tutorials, go check out his channel. He is just amazing. I'll leave it there. But
Sponsored.
I think sponsored by By CryptoCat. No, I mean, by the way, we need to start doing like $1 donation, and you can just sponsor the channel for like legitimately anything you want. You can just pick something, and we'll just have to ad lib a sponsor like in the middle. But I think within video gaming, I think that we've talked about it is the gateway drug to hacking. And you've heard the story over and over and over again. But I almost wager, while we're getting a little off topic, I have to ask the question: if you cheat in a video game, is that like, just going with me? So one of the first hacks I did was creating an aimbot for Counter-Strike. It was mine. It was great. It taught me how to bypass VAC, because VAC was very simplistic when it did. I had to just essentially debug the entire thing, figure out where the server just needed to return true, overwrite it, and I was good to go. Now, many people are born with this inherent ability where they have great hand-eye coordination, and they would just trounce me at these games. So they used their skills to level up their ability. Why can't I use my skills to level up my ability? Like, is that wrong? Is that me?
So I actually totally agree with you on this one, because my exposure, the first program that I ever wrote was a phishing bot for Final Fantasy 11. And there's the first thing I had ever written as a program ever, and it used this old tool called Asheron's Call, AC tool, Asheron's Call tool, which was another tool for some other MMO, Asheron's Call. And it was basically just like find the pixels on the screen and wait for them to change to this color, and once they do, just press the button. So it was a form of auto hotkey. But then you also, like, they had bot detectors, so you had to get it to like move around a little bit every now and then and try and do things like that. So like I agree. Like, one, like, yeah, you're risking your account banning. Also, I think it's hilarious. And three, like, it's a victimless crime, if you will.
Yeah,
right?
that's
if
it.
you
That's
just
in
do it,
PvE. I might have been doing it in PvP.
Yeah.
By the way,
yeah, but still, like, who cares?
I love CryptoCat, same thing. He got into hacking with Xbox, rewriting Halo. Like, it seems to be a consistent thing, and maybe it's just an our generation thing because we kind of grew up with video games. But I think whoever wants to continue on with the subject, but I want to shift on over to like how it came about, and I do think it's in media, in games, and fantasy specifically. I think that becoming mainstream has opened the floodgates for a lot of these other things to become mainstream.
So for gaming, I don't necessarily condone cheating and hacking on games per se. I'm in the gaming industry, and I know blood, sweat, and tears that go into the games and the designs. Now, if there's codes that you find in the game that the developers put in, then by all means. And if it helps you to enjoy your experience more, go for it. If you're going to have fun, yes. But if you're playing with others and you're getting a leg up on other people by cheating, then no, that's bad. Personal preference, that doesn't matter. My hacking as far as gaming goes, I mean, I've Doom, the IDDQD, IDKFA, and IDSPISPOPD were things that I've memorized. And I still have them memorized.
So many acronyms. What did you just say?
Those were all the cheat codes for Doom from way back in the day. Nice. So there was IDSPISPOPD, which is the no clipping, so you can run through walls. IDKFA was full ammo and all guns, and then IDKFA, no, IDDQD was God mode.
Oh, that's hilarious!
And
up, down,
those
down,
were
left, right, BA, select, start.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
I was going to say, was there also the Sonic the Hedgehog one in there somewhere?
As far as those go, when I hack games, it's the one that I spent the most time hacking was MapleStory. Yes, I know MapleStory is a kid's game, and I got addicted to it, and I played it forever. I freaking love that game. The problem I have is I don't run Windows, so I always run Windows in a VM. And then they started building tools that prevented you from running MapleStory in a VM. And then it's like, okay, maybe I can run it in Wine. And then they started building tools that didn't allow you to run them in Wine. And it's all these gatekeeping applications, which exist all over the place. It's another form of DRM. And hacking to try to bypass that DRM so that I can play things that are locked to specific things is something that I actually believe in. And it may be slightly illegal in a lot of everywheres. But why do I have to run a very specific type of system to enjoy content that I actually pay for.
Yep.
I want to pull us back to the topic. So before we move off video games, Gower, you looks like you have something to say.
Oh no, go for it.
So I want to pull us back is how did, and again, I know we're melding a little bit of geek culture, a little bit of hacking, but I think as Gower said, I think these things in some ways are close. But how did it become mainstream? Would you agree with me? Do you think it is film and fantasy that has brought some of these things mainstream? Because as geek culture became pulled into like the main sphere, I think hacking as well became a big one. I also think there's this giant push towards STEM, and I think that adds to it as well.
I think Gator probably hit on it the best, which is the access to information on how to do these things, and the tutorialized nature of a lot of kits out there that enabled to do these things is much more available in the modern internet age than they were when we were kids. Like, I remember I would go to the bookstore, and to learn C, you would buy a book this freaking thick because there was nothing, like, I barely had the internet. You had to learn programming from a book. Like, that seems like, tell that to a kid today, they'd be like, what? I'm just gonna go watch some YouTube videos and pull up Wikipedia. What do you mean I need a book?
Did anyone else think of Princess Bride? Book. Back in my day, TV was called Books, and this is a special book. Princess Bride is like totally like, oh goodness, it's right here. Keep
for
going.
It, Gator.
No, I absolutely agree with you, because we had to learn things via books, because I mean, internet was not as much of a thing it is now. You literally have more access at your fingertips, and I think you hit it on the head with the tutorialization of everything. You can literally go look something up now, and there's somebody who's made a tutorial for it, versus you going and buying a $60 book at Barnes & Noble or whoever else, like my entire bookshelf was, and every time I hit a bookstore, it would be like, oh my God, my wallet really hurts me, and now I have 5,000 books in my library because I wanted to learn all the things. So
Now,
the access has gotten easier, and the tutorialization, because the community, I'm going to take a stretch here, the community has grown as well to be not so gatekeepery. And I'll hand it off.
So I'm either going to take this a step forward or a step back. It's the tutorialization of actual projects. When, like, back in Dewey Decimal days, we would go look in, we go pull out the card catalog, search through, and we'd find a C++ book, and then, or Visual C, or whatever at the time, and then we would sit down and we would read the book, and the book would go detail every single step that we had to go through. Now it's more project-based. I want to be able to do X in this game. How do I do that? And you go and you find a tutorial. So it's project-based. It's no longer an abstract of you have to learn everything to do this. You can actually pick up and do the specific task that you're interested in and learn how to do that specific task and grow from there, rather than learning a base and building off that base.
We're like drug dealers for knowledge. The first hit's free, kid.
I think you hit an interesting concept, because saying that everything's moving towards this project based, I think that is why people are becoming more knowledgeable, because that's how we learn. Like, I have my child in kindergarten, they learn through projects. They don't learn like, go read this book, also because she doesn't know how to read. But even when you grow older in school, you have science projects, you have chemistry projects. That's how we learn, is through doing a project, not like, here is your book, here is your Intel processor virtualization book, here is your pen test book. Now you can get concepts out of those, but typically I find that what I did was I grabbed those, and the things I learned the most with was just finding a project and pushing through, because I had a problem I wanted to solve, and this project would help me do so.
I remember in school in math, I hated story problems. Story problems were the things that I hated the most. I'm like, just give me the issue and I will figure out how to solve it. But there was some point, and it was well after I graduated from all my schooling, where I prefer story problems because that's how my brain thinks now. And because of that, when I'm handed an abstract, so if I'm going to, say, a job interview and somebody gives me a programming test at a job interview, I usually bomb those because I don't know the purpose behind it. So I'm having problems rationally going through to solve the problem. But if I'm given a real world situation where they're like, here's the issue, how would you fix it? I'm able to write programs. I'm able to solve those types of problems. And it becomes project based. I now am able to logically process through things because I can assign real world scenarios to those. And it's the same thing with programming. When I was learning programming, it was because I was trying to play a game. When they tried forcing me to learn programming in school, it was, here's a book, read the book, and go write this program. And I was like, this sucks. No one's ever going to do this. What idiot came up with this learning method?
It's interesting you talk about the gamification of learning, because I think that's another reason why hacking now, like, there used to be a giant barrier to entry for hacking. Like, this is actually something I'm talking about in that video about the release. Is like, it's demotivating trying to get in, because there is like here's all the gates to pass. You need to know programming, you need to know this, but we've gamified a lot of the learning with like hack the box, with try hack me, and you can learn while winning at a game. There's point systems. We built up better CTFs in the industry, and we've gamified them, where now, like, that, I think that even helps pull it more into, we'll call it, again, the mainstream. It's become popular because we've attached a lot of hacking to cool projects, to cool games, to movies and film and things like that, which has pulled it along. Gulo?
So I'm gonna dump something out there. If you're a parent watching this, then this may help your children. If children are watching this, turn this off and go find an adult. But so Carnegie Mellon, the guy that did the last lecture, phenomenal book, great YouTube video, make you cry. But him and his students came up with Project Alice. And Alice uses The Sims to teach Java programming. And it's designed for, I think, it's either third graders or sixth graders to sit down and start to learn programming by building their own games. And it's drag and drop to begin with, and it shows you the code. And then from there, you learn actually how to add in code and then pull out code. And then you eventually start to learn to program. And it's a really great learning tool for children. It's how I've taught a lot of kids how to program in Java, who are sadly better at programming in Java than I am now. But having those different tools out there is making it more accessible. And so now I have to question, is it cool to be a hacker, which this comes full circle? Is it cool to be a hacker because it's cool to be a hacker, or is it cool to be a hacker because it's more accessible for people to do, because now we have project or gamification of learning?
Yes. Good coin, because, I mean, to the same point that Minecraft has absolutely done this as well. How many mods are there that people are getting in? You're playing digital Legos, right? And yet there are so many mods for Minecraft now. How many folks are actually playing with Legos versus everybody's touched Minecraft, or the new one with the kids now is Roblox? So same idea. You have that ability now to start modifying your game and tweaking it to the way that you want. That's an excellent point, Gulo.
Actually, Digital Tinker posted something on programming for the Casio. I remember my calculus class, I had to have a TI-82. And the first thing I learned on my TI-82 was how to install Tetris. And after I learned how to install Tetris, I learned how to install Mario. And do you think I did any graphing on that calculator? No, man. That was my game during class.
Dude, I remember Mario on my TI in physics class. That's all I did in physics class.
The teachers had to know. It's like one of those things, about gaming on a calculator. It was so obvious. And it's like the teacher sits up there staring out. Like, now they have taught classes before, is you sit up there and you have a full view of all the students. Yet when you're the student, you think like you're hidden where like the teacher can't see. Like, but they had to know, and they had to not care, because you were learning by playing Mario. Speaking of which, this is another way. Would be another one, is speedrunners. Speedrunners ultimately are, I mean, again, by the definition, is they are passionate about pursuing the knowledge. They are hacking in many senses, especially when you go, there's like the vanilla speedruns where you're not allowed to use like tool assisted ones. But then like the one which baffles me, it was like, there was a Super Mario World one where he would move around and change places in memory, and then effectively launch a buffer overflow using just standard move and jump and button presses. Like, that is incredible to me.
Yep, and like that definitely. This is why I said it's hard to separate these things. It's hard to say that like oh geek culture is not equal to hacker culture. I would say that hacker culture is like a subset of geek culture, right? Like it's a circle within it. And maybe there's some boundaries that cross it, but for by and large, it's like this. It's gonna be a heavy crossover at a minimum. And yeah, I mean, it's funny because we're gonna keep referencing this video that's coming out after the stream, but it's a response to John Hammond, saying, when do you call yourself a hacker? He was asked the question, when did you consider yourself a hacker? And his response was essentially like, I don't think you can give yourself that title. And I'm not trying to belabor his point, but it was basically like, to me, it was a form of gatekeeping himself, right? Because what he was trying to say was just like, just do the work and put it out into the world, and don't worry about the titles, which is a good message to some extent. But I take the opposite position. Call yourself a hacker the moment you install Kali Linux. Follow the tutorial for the first time, because who cares what, like, if you're working towards it and you're gaining understanding, there isn't a point at which there isn't like this isn't you become a doctor by getting a degree that says you're a doctor, or by being a fraud, one of the two. When do you quote unquote become a hacker? I don't know. Do we consider speedrunners that use tool assisted speed runs that are using emulation and inspecting the internal? Do we consider those people hackers? I do. Do we consider Adam Savage a builder? Do we consider him a hacker? I totally consider him a hacker, right? But it's not. It's hard to say like who is and who isn't. But Gulo, you got something?
Okay, so I know that we've kind of hijacked this entire thing, but gamification of life. Boy Scouts, you earn merit badges.
Yeah.
You have to go complete X tasks, so you get a little trophy that you have to sew onto your little sash before you get kicked out for some weird reason. And when you're doing that, it's the same thing for life. When I first started becoming a hacker, it took me years before I considered myself a hacker. I considered myself a phreaker for the longest time, but I think phreakers are dead because phones are dead. And I'm old as sin. But they were titles, they were trophies, they were merit badges that I had a goal, I had a project that I could actually attain, and it was the gamification of doing things in life, having these titles. Now, I'm also a firm believer in not necessarily having goals. Goals are a good thing, but it's not the point of a goal is something that you achieve, but the point of life is the journey to that goal. If you don't enjoy what you're doing to reach that goal, then you're screwing your life up, because the goal of life is to end up dead pretty much. But it's the gamification of things. I now have a hacker title because I created a hacker title. And I think I probably have a hacker merit badge that I bought online that I'm going to sew onto my ESD freaking lab coat at some point, because I'm cool like that.
Dude, we need to make hacker merit badges that say hack on.
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
I have so many requests for the exact quote was abandoned computers, return to monkey. I have like 8 people have messaged me. I have so many stickers I need to make. Actually, I talked to Garrett over at Hacker Warehouse. I think we're gonna go ahead and, for DEF CON at least, print off a bunch of them, give them to him, where he can just give them away and things like that. I'll have probably a huge stack too. But yeah, abandoned computers, return to monkey. We'll have a hack on. We'll have to get some of those stickers. I think
so. Wait for a second. So this I think perfectly wraps something into each other. With how many of us sticker our laptops? Let's be honest. Those are our merit badges when it comes to what we're getting into, right? I mean, flow with me here for a second. Does that make sense? Because we sticker everything.
you sticker it. My laptop has no stickers on it. Thank you. I need to be pure.
I'm that way too. I don't sticker my laptop.
The first time we sticker Silk's laptop, we're stickering his head as well. Now, yes, today's merit badges are more stickers, but I still have like Velcro patches that I buy for random things. I have an entire box of electronic merit badges of I let the blue smoke out and a whole bunch of other things that I've done that I know the lab coat that I want, but it's not ESD. As soon as I can find that version of lab code in ESD, I'm buying it, and then I'm sewing on a crap ton of patches because I think that's cool. And they're merit badges. It's a progression through life. I'm leveling up in life, and the levels that I have are either the scars on my body because I did something super cool while someone was holding my beer, or I've got knowledge that I've imparted from someone else, or I'm force feeding to someone, and that gives me a skill set, and that's a new level in my life.
So, rolling back to the topic of when did it or how did it become cool? I do think invariably a lot of people today are looking to explicitly get into cybersecurity or hacking security stuff in general that would not have otherwise gotten into it. I mean, I'll be honest, I got into hacking, and there's a great interview with serial killer from hackers about this, but like I got into this industry because I saw hackers, and like I thought it was the coolest thing, and I was like, I want to learn how to do these things. And I had exposure from my mom from the software industry, and so like computers were just always in my life. But I think now, because of the media, because of the gamification of learning things, because of the ease of access to information, there's a lot of people out there, kids in high school that are like, I want to become a hacker. I want to become a professional hacker, and that's what I want to do, in part because it sounds freaking cool, right? And I think there's a lot of people out there that are in the industry that, one, they take concern with that because there's like, it's not all fun and games. And there's a lot of bashing your head against there's a lot of bashing your head against the keyboard for weeks and months on end. So you want to kind of ease them into that. But they also, I think there's a lot of people out there that have somehow found their way into the culture and now are concerned with everyone wanting their title of hacker or wanting their title of cybersecurity, and now are trying to gatekeep in some way and saying like, well, don't call yourself a hacker. So now I have to ask the question of like, where is hacker culture going? Like, what is it turning into? If we front run general society, and I'm going to make that claim a little bit because I'm full of myself. If we front run general society, where are we going that society doesn't think is cool yet?
So I know where we're going with this one. This is an easy one. We're all lemmings. If you're a hacker and insecurity, you're a lemming and you're going straight off a cliff. And the reason I say that is because everything is on fire everywhere. It's all broken. It's held together with freaking popsicle sticks and not even bubble gum. And we're lemmings.
I wish it was not true, but it is. And now, how do you deal with that information afterwards is the real question. There are small areas that you can help make effect and change. And you have to learn about risk modeling and finding out, hey, is this something I need to worry about? Because when I started in IT, let alone trying to get into security, I'm like, we must secure all the things. The fact is, there is neither time, nor enough money, nor enough smarts to do all of that, let alone when you're still building it on something else made by other humans, right? So how do you go through and actually make sure you know what's in scope? And I'll toss it to y'all.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I want I want to answer the original question. I'm going to go to Google and I'll pull it up.
Quick solution to that. I'm a lemming with a parachute. I'm a talented SOB and I don't care what catches on fire. I will figure shit out or I will move on to something else.
You asked the question, Gowrie, when I love Gulo. I love you. I always laugh. I'm like, how quickly can Gulo get us demonetized? I think like you asked like, where are we going? And I think where we are going is like specification. And I think there's a reason for this. When cybersecurity originated, we're at computer science. You're just computer science. Everything's computer science. And then we have cybersecurity. And now I think it's getting more and more specified. And I think that's where we can kind of front run culture. Like I think a lot of industries are doing this, but they're segmenting out where you now have very, very fine, like you're no longer generalist. Like you can be a generalist and you can have that skill set, but I think having a very specific expertise is going to be the front runner is what in all industries. But I think this is something which you can have a specialization and carry that forward. Does that make sense? Maybe there's a better way of describing that.
I don't grok all of it. But I actually have an answer to my own question. I think Gator is gonna love. He's gonna fall in love with me for this. I think the culture, by and large, at least within our culture, is rapidly pushing towards more and more and more things requiring to be open source, as a baseline, like as a way to do business, as a way to operate within the culture, as a way to just be part of the community in general. And the reason why I say that is you can look at Louis Rossman, who's another YouTuber. I don't know if you guys know him. He's a computer repair guy. He does hardware work, and he is a huge proponent of right to repair. And part of that, the thing that underlies that really is being able to publish tech manuals and being able to publish or forcing companies to publish tech manuals and schematics that allow you to do your own hardware repair. And that is, in my opinion, a form of open sourcing your designs and being forced to open source your designs. And there's a lot of proponents out there that are trying to say we should make this a legal requirement that you have to publish these things so that third parties can fix their own stuff that they own, and B, sell the parts so that they can do it, right? Because if you don't have both, it just fails. It completely fails. And I think this is going to I think this is going to become a core piece of the culture where being closed source, being a closed platform is just seen as outright unacceptable for a lot of the reasons that Gator has said before. It's harder to assess security that way. It's harder to maintain stuff in the future when a company goes bankrupt and their software just evaporates, right? And you depend on it. It's gonna become harder to stay closed source over time as access to information becomes greater.
I agree with that, and I'm gonna kind of tie this back with what Silk was saying. I have a conundrum in my own life where specialists are better than I am at things. I'm a generalist. I know hundreds of systems I can build ground up. I'm a full stack developer in the truest sense of I can build the entire stack, including the servers, blah, 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 blah. But a specialist is always going to do a job, and I specify a job better than I can. If I hire a network guy is going to be able to design a network better than me. If I hire a server guy is going to be able to build a better server than I can. I can build everything. I know how it all comes together. I can engineer it, I can design it, and then I can bring on other people to build it and to critique those designs. Now, the caveat to that is companies don't hire specialists per se. They hire generalists because it's cheaper for them to pay me half a salary of a single person than it is for them to pay 20 full salaries for an entire specialist team that's going to do it better. Now, this ties back into Gowery's point of, yes, we need the right to fix. We need the right to build. And the question is, do those become specialists? I can't compete with I can't compete with Bunny in hardware. I'm trying to, but there's just no way in hell. I can't go to DEF CON and compete in a lot of the CTFs because there are people that are specialized in that now, and I don't have a chance with those. I can teach people certain parts, but if I'm fixing like a tractor, so Caterpillar was one of the big ones, or John Deere with right to fix, I don't have that skill set to fix that. I know my way around engines, I know my way around tractors, but I'm not going to be able to tear into one to fix that. That's still going to be something that's specialized. Can I learn to do that? Totally. Can anyone learn to do that? Probably. And it's, once again, project based. Is that one of my goals? That I think this whole rambling is why I'm ADHD. If it's my goal, it becomes project based, and I can learn how to do that, and that becomes I can fix a tractor, I can fix an iPhone, I can fix X. Do I specialize in it? Do I become a generalist?
I think
We've had this debate. We've had this debate on specializing and staying a generalist before. Like I would say that I'm a specialist now in virtualization technology, and I have concerns about trying to go back to a generalist, workplace or work pattern. And I think, I don't know. I think you need both. I think you honestly, I don't think there's any one right answer there.
Well, I'll say it doesn't matter. Not the specialist versus generalist, but I'm saying like this. I think this is where it comes full circle. Is you are a hacker. Like you are a hacker, and there's two pieces to this. One, Gowrie said, which is I'll figure it out. I will figure it out because I have no evidence to the contrary that I won't figure it out, because every time I've come across this problem, I figured it out. And the second thing is, that is, I believe, the definition of hacker is someone who is passionate about learning. You get excited and giddy about learning new things. It doesn't really matter what the project is, whether you're moving towards generalist, whether you're moving towards specialist, you figure it out. And I want to spin it back to the open source discussion, which you meant, which is where are we moving? That excites me. Like deep in my nether region, I get excited about this concept, because what that means as a community, it means us coming together as a community to fix things. The community in general is what excites me about this field. And again, not to get all like weird and up on a soapbox, but what excites me within the world today is, in a world separated by all sorts of BS, hackers are the ones who can have a community without race, without creed, without gender, without any of this crap. And we can come together because we share that joy and that passion. Again, I'm not saying we're there, but that is the goal which I think we need to strive to. And that, again, gets me excited. Almost sexually. Actually, who am I kidding? It's most definitely sexually excited.
It's absolutely.
You're definitely getting Gator all hot and bothered over there.
Oh yeah.
So
oh yeah.
when I'm teaching things, like we're on our Discord channel, I have people ask me all the time, hey, how do I do this? Hey, how do I fix this? And I will sit down and I will spend an inordinate amount of time that I don't have to show them how to do something. I can't be a teacher. I can't do what Benny does. I can't sit in front of a class and teach a class something, because the vast majority of that class does not want to be there. They don't care.
Yes.
If you have passion, I will show you whatever it is that you want to do. I will sit down and I will waste time. I will figure out how to explain it to you. If you're passionate about something, I will show you how it works. Your passion makes me passionate. And that's how I teach people. It's how I show people. That's why I do DEF CONs, why I do the Darknet. It's because everyone there is passionate about something. I can learn something from them, and I can teach them something that can help them move on, whether it's generalization or specialization.
I think you just hit it right on the head, man, which is awesome. And there have been times we've had people come in from our local community college, come into our hackerspace and say, hey, this is great content. Do any one of you want to become adjunct professors? And we're looking at each other like, we're here because we want to be. There are people who are taking time out of their day to come and meet at a local area and learn about a subject, whether they're interested in that subject or the people that are there for the knowledge share. It's totally different. And there are still passionate people. There are still passionate students who go to college classes, who deep dive and grab that. We've had a few folks go from people inside of the hacker community to become professors. And sometimes you get one or two fantastic students, and then you got a lot of folks who are just trying to pass the class with minimal effort, and they got burnt out. So
Yeah.
if you're passionate, yeah, go for it.
So the thing I'll say, though, is that one of the things that I think is glossed over with regards to teachers is that a teacher's job isn't necessarily to just teach the content of a given class. It is to attempt to cultivate that, pull that engagement out of people where possible, and to help students find that in themselves, right? So it's totally fine that half the class doesn't want to be there. They're just checking a box, right? They're getting an exposure to a topic that they don't have exposure to already. And if during the class they figure out they don't like it, congratulations, mission success. You learned something about yourself. Like, that's what teachers are there for, to help not just deliver the material, but also to cultivate that engagement of learning and how to teach people how to teach themselves.
I agree with that, and it's why I can't become a teacher. I turn into Gulo the asshole, because if you don't want to be there, you are now the target of my affection.
Oh no.
I I am going to teach you whether you like it or not. So,
I'm going to affect you.
I am going to affect you. I want to throw this question out. If you controlled where culture goes next, if you were the Grand Poobah of where we push culture, what would be your dream for it? We've talked about, like, I do think that is where we're moving open source, but where would you want it to go? Like, if you president of the United States and you could actually affect change, what would you do?
Burn it all to the ground.
Abandoned computers return to monkey.
Yes.
Like, where would the culture be? Like, what would you want it to be? What would the hacker culture look like, and what would the mainstream culture look like with it?
So, okay,
or is it no longer hacker culture when it goes mainstream?
Nope, I 100% disagree with this line of questioning. This is a leading question. If I am president, I am not impacting culture. Culture is what the community decides, not me.
Okay, here, rephrase the question. I'll rephrase the question. Is that you like I tell my wife, stop injecting logic into this argument. If you could drive culture, if you would cultivate culture, what are the aspects of the hacking culture that you would want to become mainstream? Maybe that's a better way of asking it.
Continuing to teach people who are interested. Don't be gatekeeping. And I think between the four of us, between Darknet, between the different hole-on network stuff, we are very open-armed, and there are a lot of other people in the InfoSec community that are very open-armed and willing to teach other people without all the gatekeepery BS. We need to continue doing that. And at that point, we need to call out folks who are not doing that, because there is enough negative going on. We need to make sure we're directing people and encouraging people. If they want to learn this, here's the right path to go through and do so. And it's giving back to your community. There's enough jobs out there. There's enough people that in positions that need to be filled. We should be encouraging as many people as we possibly can who are interested in it, because we have that need. You're not going to be taking from my mouth or from my family.
So, full disclosure, all of us on the stream are part of a project called the Darknet Project, which is a group that runs I would call it a pseudo contest at DEF CON now, which is the point of it is not actually to run a contest and have a quote unquote winner. The intent of it is to try and cultivate a group of people that develop relatively tutorialized content and to engage people in a gamified manner to learn that content. So ideologically, I don't think we're going to be all that different, other than Gulo, who is there to torture people.
Okay, so
hold on. So let me answer the question real quick, and then I'll toss it your way. So and you can disagree with what I just said. I'm just saying background on this. We help run this project. So ideologically, we're going to be similar in a sense on the answer to this question. And I think one of the things that I think would be better is if we didn't look at hacking and this area of research as purely gamified, like this esport concept of CTFs and celebrating the people the way we do who win those CTFs as a celebrity status, right? I think that's unhealthy for the culture overall, because it builds natural, gates that people feel like they have to compete in a CTF just to call themselves a hacker, which is just fundamentally wrong. Right. And it builds this notion that if you are not engaging in CTFs, then you must be a bad, you must not be a worthwhile person in the industry, which is also fundamentally wrong. And that's what I think, ideologically, I think we're all going to kind of somewhat agree on this, that that's why we all got attracted to the darknet in the first place, was, I can show up, I can build a game in the way that I want to build it and try and teach people. And that's the goal. I'm in on this.
Something to say about CTFs, and then I might hand it to Gulo, is CTFs, like, as someone who has played a remarkable number of CTFs, has won quite a few of them, has won a black badge at DEF CON. Like, CTFs are not a measure of skill. Like, I know that sounds crazy if anyone who's like gung-ho CTFs. It is, how can I win the game? there are ways to win the CTF without doing the smartest things. So like, I just want to toss that one out. CTF does not, and again, I just agree with what Gowrie just said. It's not, I don't like the celebritization of the winner of the CTF because they're just fundamentally different and they don't determine skill set. You'd be a remarkable hacker, and CTF doesn't measure that in any way.
Gula.
So to go back to Gator's points, there are two things that I gatekeep. And I disagree with gatekeeping in general, but there's two things I have to gatekeep. I have to gatekeep anything that I have an NDA on, and I have to gatekeep anything that statute of limitations hasn't expired on. Anything else is fair game. Job, hacking, whatever. And then so yes, breaking down the gates. I will show anyone anything. Now, I also argue that if you can't logically find a better solution to a problem, then I will gatekeep my solution for that and be like, this is the solution we're going to use unless you can find and give me a better way of doing it. If you can find a better way, I will usually concede. But it's generally hard to find reasons to make me concede because I'm very talented at what I do. Now, as far as what Gowrie said, we help, we train people, we teach them, but I disagree with what the word he used, and I already forgot the word he used because I only wrote down what I was going to say. We are hacking predators. We take people and we groom the young minds into hackers. Now, when I say young minds, it doesn't matter what your actual age is. It's your hacking mind, whether you're 90 years old or 9 years old. We will groom you into becoming hackers.
Oh no. This is the worst clip ever, Gulo.
I feel dirty now. I feel really dirty.
No, that's wrong.
I think we're encouraging
wrong.
people. I think we're encouraging people, not in the way that Google necessarily stated it.
I think
And
something.
no.
I think I want to actually. It's funny because this conversation went from culture, and I think we've gone to gatekeeping. I want to say something. Two things, because one, some of this came from the John Hammond, and again, that video is going to come out like I think 15-30 minutes afterwards. I think something very specific to say, because Gowrie said it right, is I don't think what he was saying was a gatekeeping comment for everyone. I think it was a gatekeeping comment for himself, and that maybe he's a victim is a strong word, but he's hitting this weird imposter syndrome. And I think like something to recognize is Gowrie said it, like people coming in and getting this hacker title, like them getting that title, and I don't think anyone's in disagreement with this. Them getting that title, them pulling the hacker title doesn't take away from the hacker title. As I'm getting a weird call, it doesn't take away from the hacking title. It's also in the same way like me calling myself a doctor. I'm not a doctor. I don't have a PhD. No one should trust me or Gulo specifically to operate on them. Maybe Gulo. I probably trust him. Either way. Point being is, no one should trust us. Like in the same sense as like, I don't think hacker bestoweth upon you knowledge. It's a term to say I absolutely love what I do. I'm pursuing it, and I want to continue like enjoying it. With that, I think that's probably a good place to wrap up. But before we do, what else is there? What's the final round?
As we switch over.
As always, I mean, go learn something new. Continue to be passionate about an interesting subject, and go love your hacker family.
Come join us at the Darknet at DEF CON 30, which, God willing, hopefully is happening. I mean, like how many fingers can we cross to pray? We're Darwin willing. Sorry,
I think there's a good chance. I think there's a good chance. It's DEF CON 30. Come on, it's a 30th anniversary. It's going to be a thing. Gula.
The Darknet is definitely not hacking predators.
Oh no!
I think I've counted three. Three is the number of demonetizations this video has suffered. Maybe four.
You talked about your nether regions. I still haven't discussed mine yet.
This is not a competition.
He said yet.
And with that, Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us on your Saturday. Pursue your passions and hack on.